and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President and Head of OneSource Direct Tax, Mark Melman.
Just want to take this in for a moment. We have a lot of people coming in. The way we saw you guys getting down last night to low cash, we were afraid we were going to be doing this in front of a bunch of empty seats. So do we have Chris out there, the Chris who got up on stage last night and showed us how to party like a rock star? There we go. I saw Chris walking the hallways this morning. He still had that tiny t-shirt on. It got really awkward really fast. So as a gentleman with the really amazing voice said, my name is Mark Melman. I have the good fortune of leading the OneSource Direct Tax business. And I just want to welcome you to the We're Not Quite Closing Yet closing session. So don't all go to the airport. We have a lot of sessions planned for you today, really to continue the dialogue that started a few days back during the opening session. And that's really what we're going to do this morning, is really continue dialogue. We only have 30 minutes together, but in essence, what we want to do is a bunch of thought starters, really recapping some of the things that we covered during the opening session around tax reform. Really talk to some of our taxologist winners and what their perceptions are of how to implement software from a best practice standpoint and the sorts of things that they deal with each and every day. So we only have 30 minutes. I'm going to have a seat, introduce our panelists, and get this thing on the road. All right, so I'm going to start at the end here, and we have Dina Williams. Dina is a manager of international tax for FedEx Corporate Services. Dina brings more than 16 years of corporate tax experience, including over 6 years with FedEx. She has extensive knowledge of global transfer pricing, documentation, implementation, U.S. tax compliance for international corporations, tax accounting, and local country assistance. She's followed by Fiona Gibson, who has a geography and politics degree from Westminster College, Oxford, and is a qualified accountant holding ACMA and GCMA membership. Fiona is a tax systems lead at John Wiley & Sons. She's based in Oxford. She's a dedicated individual, keen on detail, and acts as a bridge between finance and technology. We also have Joe Habak as the senior manager in KPMG's tax transformation practice. He has over 12 years of experience in tax process data improvement services, implementing tax technology and redesigning tax processes to improve overall tax department performance. And lastly, we have Vikram Gosain, who is an editor and author in the Checkpoint group of Thomson Reuters Tax and Accounting. He's the author of Transfer Pricing General Principles, published in Checkpoint Catalyst. He's worked at several large corporations and Big Four firms, including Amazon, GE, and EY, focusing on corporate and international tax and transfer pricing. He received his BA from Stanford University and his JD from the University of California, Hastings College of Law. So please give him a round of applause before we get started. All right, so I'm going to kick this off with probably the most difficult question of the panel. And that's, what's your most memorable moment of Synergy 2017? Why don't we start with you, Dina?
I think my obvious would be being a taxologist winner. That was absolutely a surprise and was very exciting for me, for our team, our Thomson Reuters team, our implementation partners, to be rewarded for all the hard work that we put in for such a great project. In addition to that, lots of the sessions that I've been to, one of the ones that stood out to me is the intercompany agreement. So being in transfer pricing, working with intercompany agreements on a daily basis, it was great to see these new products that are coming out that will be able to help us.
Great, thank you for that. Fiona.
I'd echo what Dina says about the Taxologist Award. It's an amazing honor, and really excited to get that award. I've also really enjoyed the innovation labs, getting to play with the new products, particularly the workbench and the trans-editor rules that are coming up, and being able to shape the roadmap for those products. Really exciting.
Yeah, the innovation labs are always, when we send our surveys out, one of the top areas that people like visiting. And so that's still open for the rest of the day for those of you who are interested. Joe, how about you?
I echo you again. The taxologist win for KPMG and myself was a privilege. Thank you, Thomson. We did a presentation yesterday with Johnson & Johnson, which we really enjoyed. And last night was a ball.
Great. Vikram, you work at Thomson Reuters, so I'm just going to assume your entire experience was a memorable one here.
That's right.
So this is your moment, though, Vikram. So Vikram brings decades of experience analyzing tax law, working for some of the largest corporations in the world. We had a great opening session where we had robust discussion on what's to come with tax reform and polled the audience on a number of different polling questions. We'd like for you to share with us, what do you think tax departments should be thinking about right now as they prepare for tax reform?
Sure. So overall, I think tax reform presents an opportunity for tax departments. First thing they should do is analyze. Analyze the provisions of the proposed rules that are relevant to their business. Take this chance to do a deep dive into the technical aspects of the provisions. They're complex. For example, the House proposal is almost 500 pages. But take this chance to do that deep technical dive, but focus on the provisions relevant to your business. Second, model. Consider modeling based on the alternatives that are available and relevant to your business activities. And then based on the results of the modeling, start to implement or start to think about planning. So third, plan. Plan, and in your planning process, work with your business colleagues as you go forward to put together the most effective strategies under the proposals. Now, if after you've done your modeling and planning, you don't like what you see, then consider influencing legislation. Influencing legislation through providing written comments while the proposals are going through the enactment process. And finally, if you after you've completed the influence legislation step, if you take that step, finally, my favorite is that this is an opportunity to work with the business. Tax departments can take leadership, can partner with the business, and this is a chance for tax in partnering with the business to help provide some practical solutions with respect to the proposals that are coming out. So I think those are the things that tax departments should be thinking about.
Great. I think that's a really helpful blueprint, being able to walk through each of those steps. And when I think about working with the business, tax departments don't operate in a vacuum, right? There are a number of stakeholders involved in what tax is doing and tax's ability to affect change within the corporation. I think about you, Fiona, right? So your role is to sit between tax and a part of the business, IT. So I'm hoping you can share a bit of your perspective on how you manage that role and that relationship.
So as you say, Mark, I work between tax and the IT, acting as a bridge between those two functions. At the moment, we're really focusing on the SAP integration with determination and making sure that the tax needs are met, with the multiple legal entities and all the products that we sell, but then also looking at the IT policies, making sure that we're in line with those. So we need to be a hosted solution. We need to make sure that we have high availability, that we meet the security needs of our business, and making sure that we comply with all of those architectural policies, as well as ensuring that we get the right tax answer and the right tax outcomes for our customers and for our business.
Great. No, I appreciate that. And Dina, your role is a little bit different in the products that you've implemented. So you implemented operational transfer pricing, right? That's a big data solution, which has, I'm sure IT has a big interest in what you're doing there. So perhaps you can comment as it relates to operational transfer pricing.
Sure. Before we implemented operational transfer pricing, our tax and transfer pricing group sort of were on their own island. We had our methodologies in place, our systems in place for many years. So really the interaction that we had with different stakeholders in the business was just if there was an audit question they needed support with, or if we had issues with a system that was down that we needed to discuss. Once we decided that we wanted to go with OOXP, we obviously first went to our IT group to discuss it. As all of your IT groups probably are just like ours, they're really burdened already. They have huge workloads and lots of business priorities. So whenever we came to them with a new product, being able to say this is a hosted solution was something that they jumped on really quickly. All we needed from them was a lot of resources up front to help us make those connections, get those imports set, and be able to help us make the connections within other business groups. And then after we implemented and launched, we knew that it would be more on our team and on our Thomson Reuters team. So that was a great starting point with that team, and made some connections there that we didn't maybe have before. And we also had to work with our finance team. We couldn't get everything from the IT ERP help that they provided. So speaking with the finance team, we did the same type of exercise. We went to them and explained we were launching a new product, launching a new model, and how we needed their help. We explained to them what we needed. We worked together to come up with our format, and then we took it to our Thomson Reuters team. From there, we just took it of how we could take that data, put it in the correct format, so there'd be less manipulation on the back end. We could get everything done at the source. So we did some back and forth there and set up a good relationship there, knowing that we were going to need a little bit more help on down the road. So we set that up.
Great. So it sounds like collaboration was key to the success here.
Yes, absolutely. As far as going forward as well. Have those
Right. Would you
connections.
say you brought people in early in the process?
Absolutely, we did. Yes, I think that was the key to it, is that we made sure that we had all the stakeholders that were aware of what we were trying to do and what benefit it could provide, not just to the tax and transfer pricing team, but maybe we could help them analyze some data in a different way that maybe they hadn't thought of before, to be able to provide information to them, so we could get them on board with it benefits everybody, not just us.
Wonderful. Joe, I'd like to get your take on this, right? So you've been implementing for 10 plus years now. It seems that the best projects are the ones where there's a vision followed by a set of processes, controls. I was hoping you can share some best practice and what you've seen over the years.
Sure, Mark. When we're working with our clients, it's always very important to understand what their vision is. KPMG's approach has always been review their current state, understand the technology they have in place at the upstream, the tax systems that they have downstream, provision compliance systems. There are always other factors at play. And then try to come up with the challenges that they're having, the pain points, the things that are working as well. Work on a collaborative set of requirements. And then from there, ultimately, the best approach for a tax process and data management solution is always to connect their tax data sources, their processes and people into a globally aligned, centralized, standardized, automated and integrated platform. And personally myself, I've had a lot of success using OWM and Dataflow to do that. Yeah.
So how do you think about, so it's a complex set of requirements and what a company needs to think through. There's usually a business justification that has to take place. Can you comment a little bit on coming up with that business case?
Yep, and as you know, we presented just the other day with Johnson & Johnson on this exact topic. When it comes to a business case, a lot of people may or may not have been involved in putting together a business case, and certainly some are easier than others, some are more complex than others, but it really comes down to understanding the client's objectives, understanding the current state, as I mentioned before, and then working with our clients to work out the requirements. As an example, requirements might be improved and more central and standardized document management, more standardized processes, a better way for tracking their due dates, a more central and standardized way of collecting and managing data and making the process more integrated from end to end.
Great.
So you collect your requirements, and you use that to then justify the solution that is chosen, for example, OWM and Dataflow.
Wonderful, thank you for that. So I'm going to pivot a little bit here since we do have Vikram. And Vikram, during the opening session, we asked the audience a number of questions. And I'd like for us to pull up the question on repatriation, if you can. All right, so this question, what will be the impact of repatriation? And we have provided 4 different answers. Increased investment in the US came in at about 1/3 of the answers, with just shy of 40% no impact. We'd like to get your perspective on how you expect repatriation to take place.
Sure. So let's set the stage. What does repatriation mean when we use that term? Right now, the repatriation proposal is to tax foreign untaxed earnings of U.S. companies. And under the proposals that are out there now, for example, under the House proposal, cash would be taxed at a 14% rate, and non-cash would be taxed at a 7% rate. Under the Senate proposal, cash is taxed at a 10% rate, and non-cash is taxed at a 5% rate. Either way, we have a huge break for companies with foreign untaxed earnings because presently those would be taxed at 35% ultimately. So I believe, based on that backdrop, that we do have a stage for repatriation, and this should encourage cash infusion coming back to the U.S.
What do you expect the timing of this to be?
So timing is interesting, and it's going to vary based on the circumstances of each company. First, there is, under each proposal, both the Senate and the House version, an 8-year window under which the repatriation tax can be paid. But it is mandatory. Every company has to pay it with respect to foreign untaxed earnings. In terms of actual mechanics and timing, that'll come down to a company-by-company basis. For example, a company with a lot of liquidity, a lot of foreign untaxed earnings in the form of cash, will be able to bring that back sooner than later. And I suspect that will happen. A company with non-cash assets will have to take its time to liquidate those assets, and the circumstances are going to differ depending on the particular assets. And then finally, there's a third bucket of companies that may have assets that represent foreign untaxed earnings. However, they're not practically able to liquidate those assets. And those companies will be challenged because they'll have to pay the cash tax without the cash to pay it with.
Got it. Thank you for that. Since we're on the topic of global interaction, why don't we go back to you, Dina? FedEx is one of the largest multinational corporations, and operational transfer pricing has ramifications across a number of different countries and folks involved. How do you manage through such complexity from a global perspective?
Sure. I think the two keys to that would be communication and proactive planning. That would be the two main points that we've had to make sure that we were on the front of whenever we implemented. Like you said, we're a multinational company. We're headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee, but we have tax teams throughout the world in different regions. And we recently had a new acquisition with the TNT company that we bought, and their headquarters are in the Netherlands. So, I mean, there's a 7-hour time difference for us, so that's a little bit difficult to maintain that and make sure that we stay on the same playing field. So one of the things that we've done is we have weekly status meetings, and we discuss where we are weekly with our implementation. We have all the key stakeholders on there, so that if we run into issues, we know who to accelerate to. We can ask if we need someone to accelerate for us. We made sure that when we launched OOXP and we launched to change our operating model, we reached out to our regional tax teams and our regional finance folks to explain to them what was going to happen, what they were going to see differently. Your ledgers are going to look different. We have a new system that's giving us these results. So we went to them and talked to them about what we were planning to do and any concerns that they had and any questions that they might have or any suggestions that they would have for us that would make their jobs easier. And then the second, I think, would be we knew when we started building OOXP, we were building it just for FedEx legacy, but we knew at some point we were going to bring TNT in. So our way of handling that was we have 2 different ERPs, we have a different approach, but we knew on the front end that was our plan. So as we were building it, we made sure that we built something that was going to be scalable to bring that in, that we could make sure that we could bring in 2 systems and have results the same way instead of having to start over for what we had already built. We made sure that we did it just to add on. So it was just that constant communication and the planning with our Thomson Reuters team and our implementation partners and throughout our business.
That's great. I mean, again, it's an element of vision and understanding what the future may hold and building out the flexibility to be able to efficiently bring in that new company.
Absolutely.
Fiona, you're located in Oxford.
That's right.
A lot of the tax team for Wiley, I believe, is in New Jersey, amongst other places.
Yeah.
You're implementing across multiple departments, products over time. How do you work through it?
So again, in a similar way to Dina, communication is key, and helping those stakeholders understand the scope of the project and making sure that the scope is controlled early on as well, so that then you're not drifting. Everybody wants to achieve everything now, and that's always difficult because you have to prioritize what you can achieve. So we're planning for the next phases and the additional scope that will come in later stages of the project, but we've tightly controlled what we're delivering now, engaged the right stakeholders across the world. and including them in testing phases, making sure that they get early sight of everything and how it works, making sure that they can have early training if they want to, so that they get some form of ownership and they get an attachment to the project and what you're delivering at the beginning.
Wonderful. Joe, I'm sure you have perspective on this one.
Yeah, when it comes to thinking and acting globally for our clients, KPMG's approach has always been, regardless of what the client has come to us for, quite often we'll have someone say, look, please help us implement a document management solution or a domestic compliance or a provision solution. And where, yes, of course we can help you with that. But we always encourage our clients to think globally, because ultimately their long-term strategy should be to get there. And by thinking holistically and by helping them understand their big picture. So think about your domestic compliance, your domestic provision, your global compliance, your local country compliance, all types of tax. Then we work backwards. So we understand the big vision and the requirements, work backwards, and implement this thing in small bits and pieces to get that ultimate global solution. And by doing that, again, my experience has been very successful with OWM and data flow. The data flow piece, from a data management and collection and repository perspective, can most definitely get you global. The OWM piece, from a standard and central platform for document management and workflow management, due date tracking, real-time reporting, tracking metrics, analytics, again, totally makes you global. And that's where everybody should be.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So I'd like to come back to Vikram, and there's a question that I'm sure everybody wants to know, which is, when is this reform going to get passed, if at all? And interesting responses here, Vikram, right? Fewer than 15% of those polled thinking it was going to happen this year, and 33% that it won't pass at all. So from your research and history and investigating these sorts of things, what's the answer?
Well, I think an interesting perspective is the last time we had a tax act of this magnitude, in my opinion, was the Tax Reform Act of 1986. That process started with the House bill being introduced in September of 1985, and President Reagan signing in October of 1986. So that was a 13-month process. Now, this process started November 2nd when the House introduced its bill. Here we are 13 days later. But this week, the House should vote on its proposal, and the Senate should complete its markup of its proposal and anticipates voting on it before Thanksgiving. President Trump would like to sign the legislation by year end. If that happens, that would be, from my November 2nd starting point to year end, call it a 2-month period compared to the 13 months for the 86 Tax Act. So there's a little bit of a framework. I would suggest, based on our historical perspective, that we're looking at sometime in 2018.
So for the gamblers in the audience, it sounds like the safe bet is the over, not the under. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. It's not easy for these folks to get up on stage in front of a large group and share their insights. So if you could join me in a round of applause for our panelists.